Yes. First question on page 3. Read and find out. Is the narrator as rich as Tricky's mistress? No. The narrator is not as rich as Tricky's mistress, Mrs. Pumphrey, because she treated even Tricky very lavishly, whereas the narrator could not even afford a big car also. And then we see so many things provided by Mrs. Pumphrey to Tricky when he was in surgery, he was being treated there, and so many things, eggs, wine, and then brandy, so many beds, different type of bowls that were provided by Mrs. Pumphrey that show that Mrs. Pumphrey was richer than Dr. James Harriet. Yes, next question, Lavanya Sharma. Lavanya Sharma. After this, next Kavya Kaushal. Please get ready.
Yes.
Yes, beta.
Question 2. How does he treat the dog? The doctor treated Tricky just like any other dog in his surgery. He gave him no food for 2 days, but gave him plenty of water. At the end of the second day, when Tricky started to show some interest in his surrounding, he mixed up with the other dogs in the surgery also.
Mhm.
Uh, uh, after some days, Tricky also had to compete with other dogs for the last part of his meal,
Mhm.
and with enthusiasm, uh, which the doctor was able to see in Tricky. He was able to get an extra bowl which was put out for him.
Yes,
After
beta.
then, his progress was rapid.
Listen, try to be brief because your questions are 30 to 40 words. ठीक है? So try to be brief. आपसे सिर्फ ये पूछा गया है कि how does he treat the dog, not the reaction of the dog. So you can cut that part. Okay. He treats the dog
Okay.
just like other dogs. For the initial 2 days, the dog is not given any food but enough of water. So the dog is kept under strict observation, unlike the way he was treated in Mrs. Pumphrey's house. Yeah. Coming to the next question, Kavya Kaushal, quickly unmute yourself. Yes, Parneet, beta, start. Next question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Do you think this is a real life episode or mere fiction?
Beta,
Or is it a
which question you
novel
are
of
taking? Which question? Question number 3 on page 3. The questions we are discussing, the comprehension check question in between the chapter on page 3. Why is he tempted to keep Tricky on as a permanent guest? Yes, Malvika. Malvika, beta. Puneet, beta, find out where we are. Then you can be ready for the next question. Yes, Malvika. Third question, beta.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, Dr. James Harriet tempted to keep Tricky on as a permanent guest because Miss the Tricky's mistress sent 2 dozens of eggs, wine, and also brandy, which he and his uh, staff could eat every day with
Yes.
his meal.
He is tempted to keep Tricky as a permanent guest so that he and his friends could continue to enjoy the eggs, wine, and brandy sent by Tricky's mistress. Okay, she was sending all these things, but Dr. Harriet was not giving these things to Tricky, and he, along with his friends, was enjoying all these things in breakfast and in lunch, in dinner. So he wanted that this should continue. They could keep on enjoying all these things. That's why he wanted that Tricky should be kept as a permanent guest. Yes. Next question. Mehakmeet.
Yes, ma'am. Why does Mrs. Pumphrey think the dog's recovery is a trump of surgery? Mrs. Pumphrey thinks that the dog's recovery is a trump of surgery because in just 2 weeks, Tricky had recovered completely and had transformed to a hard muscled animal. She declared Tricky's recovery as a success just to express her happiness and gratitude towards the doctor.
Yes. Mrs. Pumphrey calls it a triumph of surgery as the treatment carried out by the narrator was quite different from what Mrs. Pumphrey had expected, because according to her, he was suffering from malnutrition or becoming weak, and she thought that doctor would give him some other treatment, giving tonics, etc., and other medicines, but he was not given any medicine, and he was only kept under strict observation and given proper exercises and roaming here and there with the dogs. So at the end, it had improved Ricky's health. That's why she considered it as a triumph of surgery. Yes, next question, Divya. Coming to the back questions on page 6. Divya, beta, yes.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Uh, the uh,
Read the
the
question. Please read the question
yeah,
first.
okay, ma'am. What kind of person do you think the narrator, a veterinary doctor, is? Would you say he is tactful as well as full of common sense?
Yes.
And the answer is the narrator, a veterinary doctor, was very sincere and capable and wise doctor. He
Mm.
handles Tricky properly and shows that he is very sincere about his profession by he does not operate upon dog unnecessarily and cures him altering his diet and activities. He is a tactful person as he knew how to convince Mrs. Pomfrey to hospitalize Tricky for a surgery. His decision to inform Mrs. Pomfrey to collect Tricky supports his sincerity towards his
Yes, yes.
profession
Be
where,
brief. Be brief.
when
Be brief.
when
It's okay.
he was tempted to take tempted to keep Tricky on a permanent guest.
Yes, the narrator of the story, Mr. Harriet, is a tactful man. He is sensitive towards his patients. He treats them with the practical knowledge and wisdom to bring Tricky out of his pathetic condition. He keeps him away from Mrs. Pumphrey by taking him to the hospital for treatment. Mr. Harriet was successful in treating Tricky without medicines by being strict regarding his diet. So we can say that he was a tactful and very practical type of doctor, and he has common sense also. Yeah. Yes, coming to the next question. Yes, Andrik Bajaj. Andrik Bajaj. Second question, beta.
Uh, a second question: do you think Tricky was happy to go home. What do you think will happen now?
Mm.
Um, at the end of the chapter, Tricky was when Tricky sees Mrs. Pamphray, he is very happy to almost uh, jumps out, takes a tremendous leap, and sails into Mrs. Pumphrey's lap. This shows that he has lots of love towards Mrs. Pumphrey, and he is happy to go to home. And if it may happen when he will reach home, some if Mrs. Pumphrey treats her as lavishly as before, he may also get the same problem of overfeeding and overeating and no exercise. But if uh, uh, Dr. James Harriet keeps a strict observation um Mrs. Pumphrey and Tricky, he may be as fit as he is now.
Yes, Tricky was alone when he was at Mrs. Pumphrey's house. At the hospital, he had made many friends with whom he used to play and run around, catching rats, etc. And he loved sharing his food with other dogs. Now he would be happy to go back to Mrs. Pumphrey's house, but he will surely miss his friends also, which he had made in that hospital. And for the second part, we can say that, as Greg has said, that if Mrs. Pumphrey takes care properly and she understands the problem of overeating and overfeeding, then this problem may not happen. But if she is only showing her love and attachment through the food and the things, taking too much care, over pampering, then the same situation can happen again. So she has to be very careful for this. Yes, coming to the next question, Isha Sharma. Those who have answered once, please lower your hands so that I can see the others also. Paneet Peta, please lower the hand. Yes, Isha.
Do you think this is a real life episode or mere fiction, or is it a mixture of both?
Mm.
According to me, it is a mixture of both because it can be possible in real life that the rich person can have vast wardrobes for their dogs and feed their dog
Yes.
their dog overfeed their dogs, but it is not possible for a normal person to have such to give such a lavish life to their pets.
Yes, the
Uh,
story is very close to reality. Rich people believe in
but
pomp and show and lead a lavish lifestyle. Mrs. Pumphrey loved and pampered Tricky like her own child, and she spoiled his health by overfeeding him. To show off to the people around, she even kept a separate wardrobe of dresses for Tricky. That is only the over pampering nature of the lady, and these type of things can be seen in the real life also, or it can be only a fiction. We can say it's very close to reality. We can see some rich people having the same type of attitude for their pets. Okay. Yes, coming to the next question. Sushant. Sushant, beta. There are some questions which are to be talked about only for the discussion purpose, but these can be taken into जिसको आप कह रहे हैं ना case study questions or the value based questions. These questions can be taken there. Yes, Sushant, beta. Read the question first. Sushant.
Yes,
Harleen.
yes, yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
yes, beta.
Yes. This episode describes the silly behavior of a rich woman who is foolishly indulgent, perhaps because she's lonely. Do you think such people are merely silly, or can their actions cause harm to others? Yes, in this episode, a rich woman was very lonely, as tell in the story that he has only her maids and her pet,
Mm.
and she uh, she was very rich, and she was able to show off also that she's very rich by keeping the different yard of his dog.
Yeah.
And yes, in society some rich people are also there, which show off about their money.
Yes. So you have to give here your own opinion, what you see around yourself in the society. Accordingly, your answer should be based on that particular your own experience somewhere. So we can say that yes, such people like Mrs. Pumphrey are silly and their actions can cause harm to others also. As a result of her actions, she spoiled Tricky's health. Such people don't act wisely and their actions can adversely affect others. So, parents, this is for the parents also. Parents who pamper their children, they hamper their physical and mental growth. Hamper means रिस्ट्रिक्ट कर देते हैं उसके रास्ते में, एक ऑब्स्टिकल बन जाते हैं ग्रोथ के रास्ते में, thus affecting their overall development. Clear? Next, Pushkar Soni, second question, beta.
Yes, ma'am. Do you think there are also parents like Mrs. Fampre? Yes, there are so much parents like Mrs. Fampre because
So much
many
नहीं होगा
parents
बेटा, so many, yes, many.
there are so many parents like Mrs. Fampre because many parents show love and affection towards their child, and also some pets in their house, and they they take
Yes,
they
they hamper or they restrict the physical and the mental growth of their child. So we can say that there are many parents similar to Mrs. Pumphrey. They over pamper and over protect their children without giving a single thought. They worry only about their eating and other habits, and it may affect their physical, mental, and emotional growth. Yes, coming to the next question. Yes, Harleen, Sumit, Gunish, anyone out of you? Sumit, Gunish, Harleen, Mehak, Prabhakar, Mankirat Kaur. Those who have answered, they can lower their hands. Vigyan Isha, beta. Lower your hands. Yes, Mehak, Prabhakar, Harleen, Gunish. Beta, quickly unmute yourself and answer the next question. Arsh, Devishi, Devishi Gira, Divya.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, beta. Read the next question.
Ma'am, what would you have done if you were a member of the staff in Mrs. Pumphrey's household? A neighbor, what would your life have been like in general?
Yes.
If I were a member of the staff in Mrs. Pumphrey's household, I would have not followed Mrs. Pumphrey's command to feed Tricky blindly.
Mhm.
In fact, I would have fed him according to the vet's advice.
Yes.
I would also have skipped sending the unnecessary stuff like luxury cushions or rugs,
Okay.
and my life would have been a very busy one as I would have to take care of the household chores as well as to meet Tricky's demands.
Yes. Very good. Very good. Here you can give your own opinion according to your ideas, what you would have done. Yes. Divya, beta. Divya, coming to the second part of the same question. What would you have done if you were a neighbor? Divya.
If I if I were as the neighbor of Mrs. Pumphrey, then I would have advised her to consult a veterinary doctor
Mm,
for the for Tricky,
mm,
and could Tricky in I would have also been supportive in their hard time when Tricky was hospitalized. My life as Mrs. Pumphrey's neighbor would have been full of surprises and gifts. Mrs. Pumphrey was a loving lady, but she was very over pampering towards his Tricky.
yes. You can give your own personal experiences here. Yes, coming to the last question. Arshud, Arshud, Ashish from Blue, Hridaya Bhalla, Ishan Palta, Himani, Mehak Prabhakar. Please beta unmute yourself. Anyone out of you? Madhav Kapoor, Akshat. Very surprising. You people are not ready to answer. One is ready. Brick Bajaj, yes, beta. Finish answer and finish it.
Last question. What would you have done if you were in the place, in the narrator's place? If I were in the narrator's place, I would have also tried to take the same step as narrator, because it was clear, it could be clearly seen that Mrs. Pumphrey was over pampering and overfeeding his dog.
Hmm.
She was treating her so lavishly that he had no exercise, to which led him to put on surplus fat, and his health was spoiled, and that's the reason he was not feeling well, and not he was lethargic. Uh,
Yes. Yes,
if
that
I were in
means,
narrator's
yes,
place, I would have done same and try to give him exercise and restrict on his put a restriction on his diet.
right. Yes, very good. Now, I think the chapter is clear to you. Now, let's start with the second chapter. I'm sharing the screen. Yes, the second chapter is the thief story. This is the last chapter we have, and we may be able to finish it on Monday. This is about a thief story. Whenever we have these type of people in our surroundings, any person who is involved in wrong type of actions, what we notice that there is some background behind that person, some circumstances or some problem which these people feel, due to which they have to go to this line. So in this story also we have a boy who worked at it as a thief, and the person with whom he lives makes him realize the importance of education. And then he thought that if he got education, he would earn much more money than he was getting from stealing. So this is the idea. In this chapter we are getting the importance of education, how a person who was involved in stealing and thievery, etc., realized the importance. That means, in what way the writer wants to, in the one way, the writer wants to make it clear that how reformation of a criminal is best achieved through love, understanding rather than punishment. कि ऐसे लोग जो हैं जो criminal activities में involved होते हैं, if these persons are treated with sympathy, with love, and we want to probe them why they had come to this work or profession, there is some background, there is some history in their back why they are compelled to. Otherwise no one is born with ill feelings and bad habits. God has given good qualities to all. Sometimes the circumstances compel a person, and no one is there to guide that person. That's why these type of people come into the wrong activities. And it depends upon the person who is attached to that person, that if he is made to realize the feeling of love and sympathy, the goodness can be awakened. कि उसके मन के अंदर मन जो goodness होती है, अच्छाई होती है जो भगवान ने हर एक को दी है, that can be awakened. वो suppress हो जाती है according to the circumstances of the society. So we must treat these people with sympathy and love. We should hate the crime, not the criminal. Clear? So look at the lines. A young boy makes friends with Anil. Anil trusts him completely and employs him. Does the boy betray his trust? A young boy here refers to the thief, and Anil is the person with whom he uh, comes just to rob him. And what happens? He trusts him completely and employs him, वो उसको अपने पास एज ए सर्वेंट रख लेता है, काम देता है उसको. And what does the boy do? That we'll read in the story, whether he also becomes faithful or he betrays him. Betrays होता है धोखा देना, कि उसके विश्वास को धोखा दिया उसने. We'll read the story and then come to know. I was still a thief when I met Anil, and though only 15, I was an experienced and fairly successful hand. Who is narrating the story? Please try to understand who is I here. I is the thief. His name is Hari Singh. Hari Singh, you will come to know in the next part of the story. Hari Singh is the thief, and he says, I was still a thief when I met Anil, कि मैं अभी भी thief ही था जब मैं अनिल को मिला. And though only 15, underline his age, she was only 15, I was an experienced and fairly successful hand. वो अपने काम में successful hand, अपने काम में जिस काम को करता था, वो चोरी जो करता था, stealing करता था, he was very much experienced and successful in that at the age of 15 only. Anil was watching a wrestling match when I approached him. He was about 25, a tall, lean fellow, and he looked easygoing, kind, and simple enough for my purpose. Now, where they met, Anil and Hari Singh, they met in a wrestling match. Anil was watching a wrestling match. When I approached him, I means Hari Singh reached to him. He was about 25. It is about Anil that he was 25, whereas Hari Singh was of 15 years. He was a tall, lean fellow, patla sa lamba आदमी था, and he looked easygoing, means very simple man, kind and simple enough for my purpose. What was his purpose? To rob him, कि उसको धोखा देना और उसके घर में चोरी करना. That was his purpose. He says he was very kind and simple enough for my purpose. कि मेरे हिसाब से वो बहुत simple और साधारण आदमी था and can be easily robbed. I had not had much luck of late and thought I might be able to get into the young man's confidence. तो कहता मुझे क्या लगा कि I had not had much luck of late. मुझे बहुत ज़्यादा मेरी किस्मत में देरी नहीं लिखी थी. I had not had much luck of late. मतलब luck मेरी जो थी वो अच्छी थी. I was fortunate and thought I might be able to get into young man's confidence, and he thought that he would be able to get the confidence of this man. He would be trusted by Anil. You look a bit of wrestler yourself, I said, and just to get introduction and just to talk to him, he started like this. He looked like a wrestler. Hari came to Anil and he started talking to him in this manner. A little flattery helps in making friends, because he was in belief that if you flatter someone, you can make that person your friend easily. तो इस वजह से फ्लैटरी समझते हो ना, चापलूसी करना, उसकी किसी की खुशामद करना. तो उसने उसकी प्रेज करते हुए उसको कहा कि आप रेसलर लगते हो बॉडी से. सो डू यू, ही रिप्लाइड. एंड व्हाट वाज द आंसर ऑफ अनिल? कहता यू आल्सो लुक्ड एज wrestler, which put me off for a moment, because at that moment I was rather thin. And he was very thin when he answered in the same manner that you also look like a wrestler. And he was compelled to think for a moment. Put me off for a moment means he was got confused and started thinking. Well, I said modestly, I do wrestle a bit. And he agreed that he also do wrestling a little bit. What is your name? Got the introduction, Hari Singh. I lied मतलब उसने झूठ बोला. I took a new name every month that kept me ahead of the police and my former employers. Because he was a thief, so every month he used to change his name. He took a new name every time so that he should be kept away from the police and his former employers. Former employers जहाँ पर कि वो पहले काम करता होगा या जहाँ पर उसने पहले चोरी करी होगी, वो उन लोगों से और पुलिस से बचना चाहता था, इसलिए कहते वो क्या करता था, हर बार अपना नाम जो था वो चेंज कर लेता था. After this introduction, Anil talked about the well-oiled wrestlers who were grunting, lifting, and throwing each other about. Then they started talking about the wrestlers because they were watching a wrestler match. I did not have much to say. Anil walked away. I followed casually because he was not having anything to say. He just wanted to rob him, get his confidence. So he did not talk much after that, and Anil walked away, and he also followed him in a casual way. Uska पीछा करने लगा. Hello again, he said. I gave him my most appealing smile. I want to work for you, I said. स्माइल करते उसको कहता है कि मैं आपके लिए काम करना चाहता हूँ, बट आई कांट पे यू. लेकिन अनिल वॉज नॉट विलिंग टू कीप हिम एज अ सर्वेंट बिकॉज अकॉर्डिंग टू हिम he was not having that much money. He could not afford to keep him as a servant. I thought that over for a minute perhaps I had misjudged my man. तो उसको लगा कि शायद उसने गलत जजमेंट कर ली है उसके बारे में, तो उसको तो लगा था कि अच्छा पैसा होगा इसके पास. लेकिन जैसे ही उसने कहा कि मैं इस चीज़ को अफोर्ड नहीं कर सकता, आई डोंट वांट टू have a servant, so he was in thought that he had misjudged. I asked, can you feed me? तो उसको कहता चलो आप मुझे खाना तो एटलीस्ट खाना तो दे सकते हो. Says, can you cook? I can cook. I lied again. Again he lied that he could cook. कि उसने झूठ बोला फिर से कि वो खाना बना सकता था, जबकि इसको खाना पकाना नहीं आता था. If you can cook, then maybe I can feed you. ठीक है, तुम अगर खाना पका सकते हो तो शायद फिर मैं आपको खाना खिला भी सकता हूँ. So I'm leaving it here, beta. We'll continue tomorrow.